Shabbat Shalom.
It's your bar mitzvah parasha.
My bar mitzvah parasha, yes, just a couple of years ago.
What do you remember of that day?
Many things. No, I'm not going to share. We're going to go to the...
He loves to share. He loves to share.
Okay, let's go into the
So good.
Parashat Nitzavim-Vayelekh, the last parasha before Rosh Hashanah. Always read Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah. And we enter the parasha this morning in the triennial reading on chapter 30 of the book of Devarim. And that's precisely the point where Moshe is talking about teshuvah, about straying far away, being so removed in exile physically and spiritually. And that's the time when God will bring the people back. There's always a possibility of return. Of course, it sounds very familiar because this is precisely the concept of teshuvah that we've been working on and we're going to emphasize and dwell in the next couple of weeks of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And a beautiful interpretation or reading of verse 3. It's on page 1169. (1169). Veshav Adonai Elohecha et shevutcha. Veshav Adonai Elohecha. God also will return. It's a reading, creative reading of these words. It doesn't only mean, as it's translated here, then Adonai your God will restore, will return your fortunes. But it says Veshav, not Veheshiv. It's not causative. Veshav Adonai Elohecha. God also will return. So if we return, Ashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva. Turn us to you and we will return. And this is all the whole process that we are engaged in tshuva, hoping that we ourselves will be able to return and God will return to us as well.
There's also at the beginning of the parashat, Nitzavim Hayom Kochem, is that you stand there. We're not reading this in the triennial today, but that you stand all together, all the Israelites before God, and Hayom on this day is understood also to be Rosh Hashanah. So there's all these hints that this parasha, it always comes at this time, and it's awakening us to this notion of the power of this moment in time and the call to change and to do tshuva. And the question is, there are many pathways that the tradition offers to think about how this comes to be. And as we were thinking about what to learn and teach today, we came across a beautiful set of texts by, but put together by Rabbi Michael Strassel, who happens to be here this Shabbat. So we're grateful for his teaching. So the first is from the Baal Shem Tov, and it speaks about the Yetzer Hara. And when we often think about the Yetzer Hara, we think about the Yetzer Hara as the thing that kind of pulls us in the wrong direction. It's the tempter inside of us. The urge to, go after, be greedy, lust, all these things that pulls us in the wrong direction. This text, I think, awakens something very interesting about the role of the Yetzer Hara. And it says, you don't have them, so we're just going to share a little bit with you. At times, the Yetzer Hara, the evil urge, deceives a person, telling him or her that she has committed a great transgression, even if it is only a rabbinic stringency or not a sin at all. Which is a very different, when you open and read this text, you say the Yetzer Hara typically is taking me to something that is bad. And here, it kind of throws it on its head, or turns it on its head, and says the Yetzer Hara is trying to take you to think you've done something so terrible, and it's actually not that terrible at all. That it makes us think we've done something really bad when it's only a stringency of the rabbinic tradition. You know, that the rabbis have put so many fences around the Torah sometimes that we think we're doing this very terrible thing when actually it's not. It's been a fence upon a fence. It's actually not the Avirah, the sin itself. And it's the evil urge that makes us think that. And then what does it do? It says its intention is to lead that person to a state of sadness, so that by reason of his sadness, he will be distracted from the service of the Creator. It's a very powerful idea that the evil urge is trying to send us down a path of feeling terrible about ourselves because we've made some mistakes.
I think it feels like it's that negative voice within us. It's like a reframing of the Yetzer Hara being this, and I think many of us have that voice that can be sometimes the harshest critic of all, or the one who, when we make a mistake, we think about it for months and other people have been able to let go of it. I think that there is something here in terms of, thank you, in terms of
raise your
idea.
hand if you
exactly.
felt that
We
way
don't have to
before.
raise hands. We don't have to raise hands. We all feel it. Tis the season. I think there's something that also here is that it's pushing, is saying the inner work that has to be done at this time. That the Yetzer Hara obviously comes from within, but it being that voice, that it's not the one that's saying, do this thing, do this thing. It's sometimes the voice that's saying, you can't do this thing, or you're not good enough to do this thing, or whatever those negative, we put the stumbling blocks in front of ourselves to do it, which is, I think for many of us, something that resonates. And we have both of those the Yetzer Hara that tells us to do the bad thing, and also the one that stops us maybe and holds us back from being our best self.
Right, and doing the sense of tshuva, and the text teaches that it's a distraction from the service of God, right? That's part of what the Yetzer Hara is trying to do, is to pull away the service of God, which is to do the tshuva work, to do the work that says you can change. You're not just your sin. You're not just your mistakes. Brian Stevenson has that very powerful statement in his book, and he always speaks about that you're not just the crime that you committed, right? That's not who you are. And so the Yetzer Hara is trying to tempt you to thinking you're not worthy of actually coming home. And that is a distraction from the service of God, which is, I think, a very powerful image. And it gets us to a place that we spiral down, that we think we're not capable of change. And this season is meant to remind us over and over again. I mean, really, our tradition every week, every day has that possibility. But on this season, this is to get us out of this notion that we are incapable, or are we so bad that we have no hope of return. And it's that evil urge within us that kind of sends us down that pathway of sadness and depression in that way.
I think it's very important to pay attention to this in the next days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that we don't get into that trap, because it traps you in that place. And then you get depressed and you get down on yourself, and then you think you can't change. There's nothing I can do. This is what the Yetzer Hara is telling us. You're so bad in that place, and you've done something so terrible that there's no redemption for you, and you can't change, and you can't leave this place, and you can't go back home. And you can't be back on your path at one with God, or at one with others, with your loved ones, family members, community, and so on and so forth. And so in the next few days, as we're doing this work, of course, it's easy to go to the other side. It's, it's the Yetzer Hara, I haven't done anything wrong. So it's hard to discern.
It's a dance.
It's hard to discern, right? Which is the voice of the Yetzer Hara Tov within us that is saying, pay attention. You screwed up here. There's something you need to fix. And where is it trying to trap you into a place where you descend so low into the pit that then you can't pull yourself up? And so I think that's the part of the work. It's hard work. We always say, Yamim Noraim is hard work. I mean, to focus on the tefillot. There's so many tefillot, there's so many words. they're all meaningful, they're all powerful, and to be present in the tefillah, and to be present in the inner work, and to be present in the relationship with, I'm pointing up, but it's not, it's just a metaphor, right? To be in relationship with God, to hear one another in the community. There's so many aspects to the work of the Yamim Noraim, and this is one more. And so it's really hard, and it demands a lot of focus and a lot of intention, and it demands, Felicia was saying yesterday, it come at the beginning because it's a journey. If you enter the journey at 11:30 in the morning or 10:30 in the morning, you've missed a part of the ramp that gets you there. And so, just to pay very much attention to these voices within us.
I think just also the piece in some way is that the greatest sin would be thinking that we don't have a chance.
That's right.
That is the gravest sin against God, is to think that we aren't redeemable. And because we're made in God's image, which in some way teaches us that God is not worthy of that, which is the greatest sin of all. And that's why, there's some, it's very interesting to say, like, some sins aren't that so bad, like the things not everything rises to the level that we should kind of put ourselves in the pit. The greatest sin is not seeing ourselves in the image of God.
I also would say that the push is come tonight. Like, it's not, don't just come on time on Rosh Hashanah. This is part of our tradition that's so beautiful and powerful with everything. And I say this to the families all the time when we're praying. We always have an on-ramp. That is the arc of tefillah, that is the arc of the season. We always have a chance, and we don't need to just show up on Rosh Hashanah morning. We get slichot too. We get these conversations. We get the Torah reading. But tonight is also when our souls start to really crack open, when we start to face the parts of us that might make us think, I don't have a chance. And then I think that balance, and also doing it in community and not doing it alone, can help with some of the not falling into the pit, and also not seeing ourselves only as, oh, I'm wonderful, I'm great. We have that check and balance in the people around us. And I agree that it feels like that. This Yetzer Hara is the one that tells you, you don't have that spark in you. You don't have that godliness in you. And how do we push back? And how do we also face what we've done that is wrong, that is important? I think sometimes we actually have a culture where it's like, no, you're great, you're wonderful, you haven't done anything wrong.
Self-care.
A self-care culture, which also pushes and challenges this. And this pushes at that notion in a countercultural way.
So we're going to turn to another text that Michael selected. And it's a text of a teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. And this is a teaching about a verse that occurs in the Torah in the 20th chapter of the book of Exodus. And remember, that's exactly the point when all the Israelites are below the mountain, at the foot of the mountain. Moshe is up, and he's going to meet God, basically, to receive the Ten Commandments there. And the verse says, "Vayamod ha'am merachok," the people remained at a distance. Moshe nigash el arafel, while Moshe approached the arafel, the thick cloud, asher sham ha'elohim, where God was, in that cloud, God was. Moshe went into the cloud. People remain at a distance. So this is the teaching of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. People kept their distance, and Moshe entered the mist where God was. God hides God's self, as it were, in the obstacle. The mist, the cloud, the thick cloud, is the impediment, the obstacle that doesn't let you see clearly, right? And when you see something that is arafel, is a thick cloud that doesn't let you see what's on the other side. God hides in this obstacle. That someone who is wise, like Moshe, will look at the obstacle and discover the Creator there. But someone who's not wise, when he or she sees the obstacle, they will immediately retreat. When there's some sort of a blockage, doesn't let you go into the other side where you want to get, you retreat. But a wise person goes right in. Now an obstacle, he says, Rabbi Nachman, corresponds to cloud and mist. This is because cloud and mist are darkness. And the people kept their distance. For when they saw the mist, the darkness, the obstacle, they kept their distance. Moshe corresponds to a quality in every person called dat, called holy knowledge. And Moshe, in every one of us, is that quality that wants to enter into that place, go into the obstacle, not run away from it. Go into the obstacle because that part in us that is the Moshe in each person, the dat, the knowledge, the holy knowledge, knows that is precisely in the obstacle where God is found. It's an amazing teaching. Therefore, I skipped some lines of this teaching, but this is an important section. Therefore, God grants permission for obstacles to be arranged for us. Because God hides God's self, as it were, within the obstacles. And one who is wise will be able to find God within the obstacles themselves. For the truth it is that there are no obstacles whatsoever in the world. In the very force of the obstacles themselves, God is hidden. Through the obstacle themselves, one is able to draw close to the Holy One. For God is hidden there. And that's why Moshe entered the mist, the obstacle, the darkness, where God was. So what's the obstacle and the darkness at this time of Teshuvah?
I think everyone has their own, obviously, obstacles and impediments. It's like the expression, when you hit a wall. Obviously, the wall here is the darkness, which is to say our instinct is to pull away, and actually moving through it and facing our darkness is actually where some of our deepest discovery of God can be found. And that's part of the work of these days, is to, you can run away, I suppose, but that's part of why we're in shul for so long, I think, is because it takes time actually to peel away the layers of the self to actually be willing to face some of our darkness, and some of our obstacles, our stuckness, and go in and say, why is that so? Or why do I always run away from this? Why is this a pattern? I think that's another way to think of the darkness, is that some of us have repeating patterns around different emotions or kind of things where we can never we hit a wall or a ceiling where we feel we can't push through. And that's exactly what this image is meant to do, is to kind of say there's actually the work to do to open something up. And I always love that beautiful teaching I think it's in Shir Shirim Rabbah, where it says God opens a pinhole, and if you open a pinhole, God will answer an expansiveness. Like, it doesn't have to be that we actually have to move it all away, that you actually need to be willing to go in a little and look at what the block is. It's so counterintuitive, right? We're looking for God in all sorts of places, particularly in the bright places. Yeah. And it's so counterintuitive. You want to look for God, come to shul on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, go inside yourself to the darkest place inside yourself. That's where God is. It's amazing. In the darkest place that we want to just run away. We want to be so far away from our darkest places, but that's exactly where God is found, according to this teaching. It's profound.
I think it's also very challenging. I think it's very challenging, and it's something that I've taught on and thought about. And even in the rabbinic tradition, there's discomfort with this, to the point where in the tefillah, we have a quote that was taken from the prophets, and they actually switch it. Right after we say Baruch Hu, we say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam yotzer or uborei choshech oseh shalom uborei et hakol. And the actual quote from prophets is oseh shalom uborei et hara, that God also is the one creator of the Ra. And I think even here with Rabbi Nachman saying that God also creates this obstacle. Like there's something in there which I'm curious how that part of it also twists and challenges, because I think the image is beautiful of having Moshe walk into, and the way they read this verse too, of thinking about this being the moment also of revelation and how Torah and community plays a part in allowing for this journey, this spiritual journey. And also it's hard enough that the rabbis actually tweak it, that to think of God being everything is the goal, and to get there, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. I feel like even fleeting moments of having those moments of really feeling like, what does it mean to find God in those dark places? What does it mean to encounter God, or even to have God sitting there? I sometimes actually think about it more of just God sitting there with me in the pit. That it's not necessarily anything other than just having that companionship and being there together, talking, being held, wanting to be held. But it's hard.
I mean, I think you make a very, very deep point. God created the world, and it's an imperfect world with good and evil. We don't know why, but this is the world we got. And we are here to do spiritual work. We're here to wrestle with evil in ourselves, and the darkness in ourselves and in the world. We're here to do that spiritual work. This is the meaning and the purpose of our lives, and to transform it, and to shift it, and to bring light into darkness, and to find God in the darkness, because God is also light, and so to reveal and uncover the God that is concealed in all these places, and to release, so to speak, if one can say so, as the rabbis say, if one can say so, to release God from the trap of the darkness. Look how much darkness there is in the world now.
Yeah.
And this is the spiritual work that we need to do, but it begins with ourselves. And that's
This week, John Polin, the father of Hirsch Goldberg Polin, he's a bike rider, and a friend of theirs was a bike ride for some cause that I guess he's done in the past, and a friend of his, he said, John posted something like, I don't even know how I can get up, and the friend told him the only way you can go through is to ride through it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about that. It's like we don't have certain choices. Like there's a lot in our life, the hard stuff that we encounter, death, pain, suffering, depression. We don't have a lot. We don't get to choose everything that is delivered to us. I don't know that God is choosing that for us. I don't happen to believe that God is kind of saying, you get this and you get this. That's not the God that I believe in. I want to be clear about that, which is, I think, part of what you're bringing up, Becca, is like, at some point I was like, God didn't give me cancer so I could get some learning in the darkness. Like, that's not the theology. I think I'm not going to speak to Nachman's, all of his theology, but I want to say that I think part of what this text elevates is we don't have a choice with the darkness that's before us. That is what we have. It's the life that we are living. Some of the terrible things that are happening to us personally or in the world, like John has experienced, is a nightmare. And it is the darkness that's before him, and we all have some version of that. Thank God most of us haven't had his particular darkness. And we have to move through it, or else we're going back. We're running away. And I think that's a choice. That is a choice to say, I only can go through this. I have to, sometimes someone said to me a couple of years ago about the mourning they were experiencing of a terrible loss, that they were afraid if they started to cry, they would never stop. And so they were holding back in order to they were so afraid of going through that darkness that they would not recover. And I think at some point, that holding back is going to hold you back so much that you can't actually move through. And that is, I think, part of the work of these holidays, is to say, like, we actually can't go back to, thank God, we don't have to live 5784 again. I mean, with so much darkness. And we have a choice of how to move through in order to find some spark of light, or else what are the other choices? Just darkness. And I think that's part of what's so powerful about this text, which is it's the counter voice to the Baal Shem Tov text, which says, like, it's not so bad, recover. Like, this is to say, no, go right through, and we all have to kind of figure out our map of the holidays and the map of the soul, of which things we can say, I can let go of that. That's not all of who I am, and which things are actually the things we need to face in the deepest sense, and work them through with all the tears and the pain they uncover. But that's also where the most powerful liberation can be found, I think, and where also God can be found too.
Pray we all have meaningful, deep, and productive spiritual work in the Yamim Noraim.
Amen. Amen.